Thank you for deciding to be with us rather than by the pool this afternoon. And as you know, we've been discussing a lot about protecting our elections this week, and with good reason. And we come to number 7 of this series because we all believe that confidence in the integrity of our electoral process is really at the core of our constitutional republic. And so today, to discuss the principles of protecting elections and of election integrity are 3 very distinguished panelists. To my left is Andrew Wheeler. You may know him as the former administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, but he also has a very distinguished record in electoral process. In the center, John Fund, whom I know you all know from the National Review, who has written extensively through the years about the need to protect elections. And as was introduced off stage, Denise Cohen, an election lawyer who now heads up the American Conservative Union Foundation's Center to Protect Elections, which is being launched today. So Andrew Wheeler, I want to let you lead off by perhaps telling us an anecdote or two about your experience with the electoral process and where you see us going and how the principles of free and fair elections work into all of this.
Sure. First of all, as a member of President Trump's cabinet, I was not involved in the 2020 election, either before or after Election Day, so I don't have information that the Trump attorneys had. But my involvement in elections goes back to 1998, and I worked on every election since then. And I have a lot of issues with the increased number of mail-in voting that we're doing and the mail-in ballots, and I've seen problems in the past. And one year in particular was in 2004 in Ohio. I actually worked on the Bush-Cheney re-elect in Ohio, Southwest Ohio, with Dan Schneider of here at CPAC. The two of us were in charge of the voter integrity for that area. And in Ohio that year, for the absentee ballots, the instructions told people to put a first-class stamp on your ballot when you mail it back in to the County Board of Elections. And in my hometown in Ohio, which is about 65–70% Republican, the postmaster in my hometown decided that the ballots needed an extra penny stamp. Instead of returning them to the people or sending them to the Board of Elections, he directed his employees to stack them up in boxes. We found out from an employee of the post office 2 days before the election that there were hundreds of ballots in boxes waiting in the post office to be delivered and that had not been delivered. The county Republican Party went in, offered to pay the postage for all of them. He refused. So we had to get a local attorney to go to a judge and get a court order to have these ballots sent in to the Board of Elections in time for the deadline. That just shows you when you increase the variables in elections, you increase the opportunities for individuals to get involved and do mischief. And that really does concern me. The party did a much better job, I believe, in the past as far as monitoring these things. We were in Ohio a month before the election, training attorneys, training observers, and that hasn't happened as much in recent years, and we need to get back to that.
John Fund, there's probably no one who has written more extensively or studied these issues more than you have. Given what's gone on in 2020 and what we see looking down the road, what are the most important points that you believe exist with respect to protecting the integrity of the electoral process?
Charlie, we have to recognize that this issue has changed. There used to be bipartisan support for clean and fair elections. Jimmy Carter co-chaired a federal commission on election reform with James Baker, the former Secretary of State, and they agreed by a vote of 18-3, bipartisan, for example, that voter ID should be the standard for the country. They agreed on other things. It was John Paul Stevens, the most liberal member of the Supreme Court, that wrote the opinion upholding the constitutionality of photo ID. That was the past. Now we have a hard left that has taken over the Democratic Party and has given us H.R. 1, and you've heard about the horror stories on that.
We're going to talk a lot about H.R. 1 in just a minute, but go ahead.
I know, but so that's how much things have shifted. Now, let me give you an example of where the hard left has operated. There's still some sensible Democrats. So Martin Luther King III, Andy Young, the former mayor of Atlanta, Jimmy Carter, And even Bill Clinton, 5 years ago, had a conference to celebrate the Voting Rights Act, and they agreed, you know, why are we fighting, spending all these hundreds of millions of dollars fighting about voter ID? Let's get people a voter ID if they don't have one. I don't think very many people lack one, but let's get one. Because you can't be part of the mainstream of American life. You can't travel, you can't get Medicare, you can't get anything without an ID. So let's get them one. And they said, okay, the states will continue to run the elections, but let's have a fail-safe. If you can't get a state ID for free, let's have, for 9 cents a card, the Social Security card can carry a photo on it. Just a photo with your name. Social Security card. And that will be enough to allow you to vote. They took that idea to the Obama White House. The Obama White House said, oh, it sounds maybe, but go to Eric Holder. Eric Holder met with them. Eric Holder says, but we got to run this through our liaison with the minority community. So nothing happened. Perfectly sensible idea. I was willing to go with it. And then it came back. Oh, we can't do it. Our liaison to the minority community says, it will disturb the existing local community practices. Who's your liaison to the minority community? Oh, it's Al Sharpton. There's a reason why the hard left is going to oppose everything on election integrity. Something is going on behind the election curtain that they don't want you to see and they don't want you to know about, and their friends in the media are in complete denial about it.
So Denise Cohen, you're a noted election lawyer and are now going to head up the ACUF Center for Protecting the Integrity of Elections. Give us a little breath of fresh air and tell us why this is so important and what you'll be doing.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's important because no other right that we have means anything if we don't protect the right to vote. Everything else can get trampled on, as we're seeing right now with the censorship and H.R. 1, which we'll talk about. So voting is the most important thing that we can do. We're going to focus on it based on the horrendous situation that we've had in 2020. The Center to Protect Elections is going to have 3 parts to it, and it will work best if all of you get involved with us. And I'll tell you more about how you can get there. But we're going to take a look at what happened in 2020, what went wrong, from many perspectives, not just the litigation, but also from what the left did right, what Republicans did wrong, what happened with big tech and the media. We're also going to take a look at the impact of this, which we're living through right now. And then we're going to move forward. We're going to go to state legislatures around the country to reset these election laws, make them secure. We're going to make sure that our elections are not federalized. The Constitution says these need to be run out of the states. So our number 1 priority as we launch today is to make sure that not a single Republican will vote for H.R. 1. We will do our best to make sure that it does not pass. If it does, we will do everything we can to make sure it dies in the Senate. But we're going to need some help from you on that.
So let's talk about H.R. 1, because this is the so-called For the People Act, which Nancy Pelosi has made her number 1 priority, which does precisely the opposite of what each of you have talked about with respect to the integrity of elections. It federalizes elections, it overturns the current reapportionment process, puts it in the hands of some circuit court judges down in the District of Columbia, it upturns a number of state laws, and has a really negative impact across the board on the integrity of elections. A, can it be stopped? Will all of you help out with a massive grassroots opposition to H.R. 1, letting your senators know, letting your representatives know that this is really important to all of you? John, I'll go to you first, but why is H.R. 1 so bad, and what needs to be done to stop it?
Well, it basically will sweep away almost every election safeguard that the states have erected to make sure elections are fair. And of course, I want everyone to vote. And we had the Help America Vote Act in 2001. That was bipartisan. Senator Chris Dodd said, in America, we can make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. We can do both. H.R. 1 is all about destroying all of the protections we have. And by the way, expanding the Federal Election Commission from 6 members to 7 members, so one party can have a majority and change all the election laws in the country and regulations. It is a complete and utter disaster. In fact, I believe that it is so important that we stop this, it even trumps, so to speak, fighting the COVID-19 $1.9 trillion stimulus bill.
And Denise, you talked about federalizing election law. That's exactly what H.R. 1 does, even to the point of stripping states of their power to clean up voting rolls.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's an overreach in every single manner that you could actually look at. And one of the things that we didn't talk about here is what they're doing with funding. And this is, I don't know who's heard about this 6-to-1 funding matching, up to $200. Anybody gives up to $200 to a campaign, it'll be matched 6-to-1, $1,200.
Your money.
Taxpayers, exactly. And if you don't have the money to do up to $200, there will be a $25 voucher, which will also get matched.
By the way, in the Help America Vote Act in 2001, which was bipartisan, Chuck Schumer was a junior senator. He said, when that bill was up for a vote, well, of course we want to keep the states running our elections. That's in the Constitution. We would never have Congress override the states. Nobody's even talking about that. Nobody even be contemplating that. And now Chuck Schumer is leading the fight to destroy the 250-year tradition of this country that the states run the elections and the federal government will be dominating it.
Real quickly, where can it be stopped? How can it be stopped? What can every person in this room do?
Well, Nancy Pelosi has threatened or promised favors to every Democrat in the House. Every Democrat in the House is a co-sponsor. So I think there can be some progress with the 22 Democrats who are in Trump districts because they might be worried about their elections. But the real battle is going to be in the Senate, I think. I think it can be stopped in the Senate. They're going to need 60 votes. I don't think they'll be able to break the filibuster. But I think there's even a couple Democrats who will say a bill with 23 pages in its table of contents is not a bill we can ram through in 10 days. How much debate has there been in Congress on this? Almost nothing. This is on an express train to hell, and I think it can be stopped in the Senate. And by the way, if it's not stopped in the Senate and it goes to Biden, of course he'll sign it, and here's where they're closing all the doors to challenge it. They stipulate in the bill, Charlie, that any legal challenge to the constitutionality of this bill must be heard by only one court, the District of Columbia Circuit Court, which is dominated by all of the appointees that Harry Reid stuffed in it to break the filibuster on judicial nominations several years ago.
Is this a classic example of putting the rabbit in the hat?
This is the fox eating the hen house.
Andrew Wheeler.
I completely agree, and it has to be stopped in the Senate, and it can be stopped in the Senate. But we should also take a look at, over the panels over the last 2 days, we've seen a lot of examples of what's happened. We need to take a look at what's happened in California and how they have handled their elections with one-party rule. A cousin that lived in California in 1999, moved away after 5 months, never voted there. New email address in 2005. He got an email this past October saying, your ballot has been mailed to you. Hadn't lived there for over 20 years, and he got an email to an email address he didn't have when he was there saying, your ballot has been mailed to you. So we need to take a look at what California has done over the last few years with one-party rule where they have just completely run the elections. And I understand they're doing a lot more on signature ID right now on the Newsom recall petitions. So they're actually trying to put a little bit of integrity to stop the recall. But we certainly need to take a look at what they've done over the last few years.
We've talked a lot about election integrity and what all the folks in this room can do in their individual communities and their little piece of America, because all of us recognize that every improperly or fraudulently cast ballot that's either cast or counted cancels out the vote of a law-abiding citizen who did it the right way.
That's voter suppression.
That is total voter suppression. So real quickly, because I want to come to Andrew before we close, but real quickly, folks that are involved in their local parties need to be making voter integrity and election integrity a key part of their election programs. Tell us real quickly about that, John, because I know you're an expert.
I'll go even further. Many of you are active in your local Republican Party or conservative organization. Going forward, if your state, local, or even national party doesn't have as part of its core mission election integrity and a plan to hire the lawyers before the votes are cast rather than after the votes are cast, to have a legal strategy, precinct workers, people trained in this who aren't going to get into trouble, because they don't know the rules. If you don't have that as your core mission, you might as not well have a political party. And it's that important. The RNC says it's going to do a good job. We have to make sure that they do a good job. And You know, your group, Denise, is going to be very important because I believe not only for the good efforts you're doing, but you're going to be a clearinghouse in which people can find out what's happening where and who's doing what and what best practices are.
I want to give Andrew Wheeler just a second for a modest proposal.
And I'm not sure where the party is on this. I think Election Day should be a holiday to encourage everybody to vote on Election Day and not the weeks or months leading up to it.
You know, that would be a good bipartisan compromise. But you know what? I bet the liaison to certain communities at the Biden White House probably will veto it.
And if you were to have Election Day as a holiday, it would decrease the necessity of having mail-in voting, would it not?
Absolutely. The more variables you put in, the more opportunities for mischief.
Yeah, and another compromise. Early voting, at least you have the voting at a government office where you can't intimidate, coerce, or have ballot harvesting. Let's have more early voting so people have more access to the polls, but not send out mail-in ballots like some states did because of COVID to everyone who's on the list, like Nevada and New Jersey did. That's ridiculous. That is a recipe for disaster.
Denise, you may get the last word.
Thank you.
We saved the best for last.
Thank you. You know, it's really important that everybody understands how individual voting, how our individual efforts actually, make a big difference. And I live in New York. I have a lot of friends that feel like, what's the point? It doesn't matter. I'll tell you something, it matters. We were in Georgia for the Senate runoffs, and Republican turnout was lower on the runoff day than it was on the general election day. Fewer Republicans showed up to vote, and we lost the Senate. And we're going to be paying a very big price for it. Going forward, each one of us actually has to be active in this, and it does matter. It may not matter immediately, but it will matter, and that includes writing to your legislators to tell them not to vote for H.R. 1. And again, after this, there will be, you've been getting them already, but another one of these notes is going to be pushed out to you, where you can enter your details and write to your legislator. But please share this with your friends also. And if you don't get it on your app for anybody that's streaming along with us, go to conservative.org where you will actually be able to do it from there. And you'll also be able to see the Center to Protect Elections.
Ladies and gentlemen, we know that we're not really who you came to hear this afternoon, so thank you so much for your attention to this very important issue, because we all know that every legitimate vote should be cast and counted, and not one illegitimate vote should be. Thank you to Denise Cohen, to John Funn, to Andrew Wheeler, and thank you to all of you.
Thank you.